The flower smelled too sweet for tears. My eulogy. I hadn't even died yet. Claire adjusted the sapphire choker around the mannequin's neck like she was crowning a queen. David, arms folded, barked, "That's not even hers. Dad promised me the emerald cuff." And Jenna. Jenna just sat in the corner, recording on her phone, eyes blank. If this felt like your story, or the one you're still living, don't scroll past. I'm here. Tell me where you're watching from. The slideshow kept playing. My slideshow. Photos of Mahaj by love, by children, by years I gave away to easily. If this story sounds like yours, don't scroll past. I'm here. The camera zoomed into an old picture, me in my wedding dress. David's voice cut in. She wear that necklace, right? Claire rolled her eyes. She's not wearing anything. She's dead. I blinked. Still alive, still breathing, still watching from the other side of a screen. The couch beneath me felt harder than usual. Like the truth had made the cushions go cold. I looked at them, their faces lit by flickering candles, bickering over jewelry like I was already rotting in velvet. Claire turned to Jenna. "Well, you agree with me, right?" Jenna didn't respond. She just zoomed in closer. Not on the choker, not on David's fists clenching. On me, frozen. On screen, head tilted, smile faint. The kind of smile women wear when they're being erased politely. The scent of lilies curled up my nose, funeral lilies, fake ones, the kind you rent for rehearsal wakes. And then, I saw it, tucked on the edge of the coffee table, half covered by Claire's phone, the brown leather binder, the one Robert never let anyone touch. The codicil. I paused the video. My finger hovered midair for a second too long. My heart thudded once, twice, then silence. The kind that doesn't beg, doesn't scream, just sees. I stood, slowly, like bones remembering. They're still mine. They didn't notice. Not yet. I walked over and lifted the binder, gently, deliberately. My thumb brushed over the corner. Robert's handwriting peeked out beneath the flap. Single line scrawled in his sharp cursive. "Only for her. When they forget, they had forgotten. Not just my wishes. Me." I placed the binder in my purse. The soft gray one with a cracked zipper and a peppermint scent that never left. Then, I closed the laptop. Quietly, like sealing a coffin. Their argument faded beneath the click of that hinge. I looked up at them. Claire still fighting. David pacing. Jenna watching me now. I cleared my throat once. The sound sliced sharper than glass. "Let me show you how this really ends," I said. Their eyes met mine. Jenna blinked first. David looked confused. Claire's mouth twitched, but no one spoke. Not yet. I walked past the photo wall, my wedding picture slightly crooked, still resisting Claire's edits. Past the half-lit hallway where the thermostat always stuck. Past everything they thought they'd claimed. At the threshold, I turned to the empty room, to the ghost of myself they'd buried in advance, and I whispered, "First, we rewrite the rules." They fought over my necklaces, but never once asked what my favorite flower was. I'd worn sapphires through grief, pearls through childbirth, and a wooden cross when I had nothing. They saw gems. I remembered moments. The difference. One sparkles, the other scars. The sun poured through the bay window of my study like it still believed in me. I didn't. Not yet. But the binder was there. Unopened, heavy, waiting like a loaded question. I slipped off my shoes, tucked my feet under me like I used to during bedtime stories, then opened it. The first page was crisp property deeds, legal language, signatures that used to mean stability. There it was, a note in Robert's handwriting, not legal, not official, just ... him, folded into the crease, smelling faintly of his cologne and age. "Ensure they earn what I gave them, not inherit. Earn." I sat back, not crying, not breathing, just still. My children never once asked me what I wanted, not for my funeral, not for my legacy, just assumed I'd vanish politely, like steam off a teacup. The phone in my hand felt colder than usual. I tapped in Mr. Thompson's number from memory. His assistant picked up on the second ring. Her voice was chipper, practiced. "Ms. Carter." "Yes," I said. "I need to review everything today." She hesitated. Then, "Are you ready to change everything?" I looked down at the codicil, at Robert's script, at my name beneath layers of silence. "I'm ready to protect it all," I said. I hung up and stared at the open folder. The contents fanned like a deck of consequences. Deeds, wills, jewelry, inventories. They had named everything I owned, but not one thing I loved. The air tasted like old ink and lemon polish, and underneath it, betrayal, bitter, coated in civility. I rose, walked to the wall safe, twisted the dial through muscle memory. The click rang louder than expected. Inside, I placed the binder gently next to the deed for this house, the one Robert built with his bare hands and a stubborn back. I touched the folder once before shutting the safe, not to feel the paper, to feel myself again. That's when I noticed it. The jewelry inventory list. The copy was marked incomplete. Claire must have found the old version, which meant she hadn't seen the final clause, the emerald cuff. It wasn't even in her share. A small laugh slipped out, dry, not amusement, recognition. This wasn't about jewelry anymore. It was a test of memory, and mine was sharp today. I sat at the desk and drafted a message. Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed the codicil. I'm ready. Can we start today? I placed my phone down slowly, like setting a chess piece, one that just changed the board. Outside, the wind brushed against the window like it was trying to read the lines of my face. For the first time in months, I let it see me. Not a widow, not a relic, a woman rewriting her ending. I walked into the law office dressed like grief had finally learned to stand up straight. Not in black, in steel gray. Not mourning, planning. There's a difference between being done and being finished with letting others decide how your story ends. The receptionist barely looked up as I entered Thompson and Pierce. Her lip gloss shimmered like she was headed to a wedding, not watching women resurrect from the ashes of betrayal. Margaret Carter, he's expecting me. She gestured toward the glass door. Inside, Mr. Thompson stood. His tie was crooked again. He never noticed. Robert used to say that meant he was trustworthy. Now it meant I could stare at something off balance and feel oddly safe. I sat without waiting, then reached into my purse, the soft gray one again, and pulled out the codicil binder and property deeds. They landed on his desk with a hush, the kind of silence that makes men listen. He flipped through the pages slowly, brows lifting, mouth twitching. This clause, he murmured, tapping the page. You're named as guardian of the house. Did you know? I nodded. I do now. He kept reading. There's a life use provision. You can restrict access, set residency rules, override informal occupancy, even if they're my children. He paused, looked up, his eyes flicked to mine, assessing the price of power, especially if they're your children. For a moment, the room stilled, not silent, still, like the breath before thunder. I studied the sunlight crawling up the bookcase behind him. It stopped, just shy of the spine labeled trusts and wills revised. Even light hesitates before legacy. Can I set binding conditions now? I asked. He leaned back, fingers steepled. You'll spark a fire you can't fully control, Margaret. They will fight back. I smiled, slow and unblinking. Good, I said. I'm done hiding embers. He blinked, then nodded once. Just once, as if granting a woman her war. We went through clause by clause. I asked what I was allowed to do, then what I was afraid to do. That's how you know the difference between fear and readiness. You stop asking what's fair and start asking what's possible. At one point, I reached for my peppermint lip balm, cracked, faded, useless now. I almost applied it, then stopped. Even comfort has an expiration date. Mr. Thompson folded the binder gently, looked at me like I wasn't a client anymore, more like a storm he'd helped release into the world. Outside, the sun was waiting like a silent witness. I walked through the front door of that building with nothing but my purse. Inside it, a cracked lip balm, a silver pen, and enough fire to burn down the old version of myself. I stepped into the daylight, lifted my face to it, and let the heat tell me I was real, because sometimes the most radical act of love is putting conditions on the people who took you for granted. Power doesn't shout, it signs paperwork. It doesn't wear heels, it wears reading glasses. It doesn't rage, it redlines. If this story sounds like yours, don't scroll past. I'm here. The pen in my hand felt heavier than grief had ever been. I sat across from Mr. Thompson again, same desk, same crooked tie, only this time, I was the sharpest claws in the room. He slid the document toward me. Conditional bequest addendum, jewelry, property, bank accounts, each now tied to one thing, character. Claire wouldn't inherit a single stone unless she proved consistent acts of family unity. David would need documented charity work, not a photo op, real hours. Jenna, honesty, the raw kind. In writing, I'd buried love in silk-lined boxes. Now they'd have to unearth it with clean hands. Do you want to add an enforcement line? Thompson asked. I nodded. He clicked his pen open. Click. A sound like a final nail in an invisible coffin. Terms are unmet, I said slowly. They forfeit the gift. Permanently. He scribbled, then slid the document back. The signature line waited like a trapdoor. I hovered over it, the same way I used to hover over their cribs, checking breath. Now, I was checking legacy. I signed, ink on paper, blood on memory. I exhaled, not relief. Something tighter, like holding power too long in your lungs, makes it ache. I reached for my purse. That same soft gray one still carried the faint smell of peppermints and old receipts. I slipped the signed copy inside, then stood, a woman with a safe in her house, and one in her chest, Margaret. The door burst open. Olivia, Claire, single quotes, as lifelong best friend, wearing too much perfume and not enough truth. She looked at me, startled, but recovered fast, that trademark smile sliding across her face like icing over a bad cake. I just need 5 minutes of your time, she said. Business idea. I tilted my head, then reached into my purse, pulled out the notice, held it between 2 fingers, gently. Like a fuse, you'll want to read this, I said. She took it, scanned the header, then flipped through with increasing speed, eyes flicking line to line. Her lip curled. This is insane. No, I said softly. This is inheritance. Now, she clutched the paper like it might turn to ash, then hissed, you can't do this to us. I looked her in the eye. I trust you'll comply. Her mascara twitched. She shoved the paper back toward me but didn't let go. A tug of war without ropes. Just control. I didn't blink, didn't flinch, let her tug, but I held firm. She finally let go, stormed out in heels, too high for dignity. Silence followed, that beautiful, decisive kind. The kind that says, you were heard even after they left the room. I tucked the paper back inside the purse. That little bag had held everything today. Memory, fire, rules. Now it held peace. Not the soft kind. The earned kind. Outside, the sky had turned the color of lavender ash, soft, smoky, hard to read, but I didn't need signs anymore. I had signatures, because power doesn't announce itself. It waits, then it changes the locks. I didn't set the table for peace. I set it for proof. Napkins folded, glasses chilled, chicken roasted, and, at the center, 3 copies of the document that would crack the illusion of family wide open. This story sounds like yours. Don't scroll past, I'm here. David arrived first, earlier than expected, suspiciously polite. He brought dessert, but I could smell apology on him before the pie even cooled. Claire came in next, a little too done up for a family dinner. Guilt wears eyeliner when it wants to distract. Jenna knocked twice before entering. She looked down, the whole time, not shame, just distance. They sat. I served. Roast chicken, buttered carrots, my old herb stuffing recipe. The same meal from their childhood birthdays, except this time, there was no cake, just contracts. I laid the papers on the table like extra placemats. No one reached for them. I cleared my throat. Before we eat, I said, I'd like to read something. Claire reached for her wine. David leaned back. Jenna froze. I read the full clause, line by line. Claire's inheritance tied to proven family unity. David's to community service. Jenna's to honesty, no embellishments, no edits. Silence was a second guest. Uninvited, but very much present. Claire snapped first. You can't be serious. I didn't flinch. I am. David pushed his chair back slightly. I've donated before. No, I cut in. Not donations. Work, sweat, time. Jenna whispered. Why honesty? Her voice cracked like a worn-out record. I looked at her. Because you lie with your eyes. I thought, because you disappeared without ever leaving. But I only said, because truth is the rarest heirloom we pass on. They didn't eat much after that. The food cooled. The wine warmed, and the air turned to glass. Claire grabbed her bag first, muttering something about betrayal. David kissed my cheek too hard. A silent threat wrapped in sugar. Jenna just nodded and left without touching her plate. I sat there for a while. The chicken skin sagged under cold gravy. Forks sat abandoned, and my napkin lay untouched in my lap, still folded. I cleaned slowly, not like a host, like a historian preserving evidence. Upstairs, the study lamp flickered once when I turned it on. I didn't replace the bulb. Some things glow more, honestly, when they're broken. I pulled the codicil binder from the safe. Its weight met my palms like it remembered me. Then I revised one clause. Just one. A private clause for Jenna. No signature required. No formal test. Just one simple request. Tell the truth to someone you've lied to, without being caught doing it. I stamped it. Confidential. Not because I didn't want her to see it, but because I wanted to see if she'd look for it. My hands were steady. Steadier than they were when I held her as a baby. Back then, I worried she'd break. Now, I worried she'd forget what unbroken looked like. I slipped the updated page into the binder, closed it, locked the safe, tucked the key inside my gray purse next to the signed copies. Then I turned off the lamp. The room exhaled darkness like it had been holding its breath all day. At the door, I paused, not to listen, to measure how silence feels different when you've earned it. Then, I whispered, "Let's see who cares enough to try," and closed the door behind me. The floorboard didn't creak until after she stepped on it, as if the house was deciding whether to betray her too. If this story found you at midnight, let me know, I'm listening. It was just after 2 a.m. I heard the door open from the hall, soft, hesitant, like guilt brushing against wallpaper. Jenna. She moved like a girl again, not the woman who left her plate untouched. Bare feet, wrinkled cardigan, no phone, which meant this wasn't about defense, this was about doubt. I didn't move, just listened from the bedroom doorway. My house had never been haunted, only overheard, and tonight it was listening to. She entered the study, flipped the lamp on. It didn't flicker this time. I'd replaced the bulb, quietly, earlier. Even mercy deserves light. She approached the safe like it might hiss. She knew the code, of course she did. They all think secrets make them smarter than the woman who wrote the rules. The safe clicked open. She pulled out the codicil binder. Her breath caught. I could hear it, sharp and fast. She flipped page by page. 1. Clause 2.3, but not the one I hid. That page was already gone. And that's when Claire appeared in the doorway, wearing silk pajamas, like she was still someone's favorite. She held it, the confidential page, pressed flat in her perfectly manicured hand like it belonged to her. Jenna froze. Claire didn't speak, didn't need to. Some women weaponize silence like it's patent pending. Jenna lunged. Claire stepped back, binder in one hand, page in the other. "You think you're special," Claire whispered. Jenna grabbed for the document. Claire pulled it just out of reach. "Of course she gave you a secret clause," Claire hissed. "You've always been the shadow," she pitied. They struggled. Not violently, desperately, like two memories fighting for the same moment. The binder dropped, hit the carpet with a dead sound. I stepped in. No rush, just gravity and slippers. They stopped. Even shame needs a witness too. Know when to sit down. I picked up the binder. Claire still held the page, now slightly bent. She glanced at me, then at Jenna. "Is this your idea of fairness?" Claire said. "Private terms for the baby sister." I looked at her hand, her face, then said quietly, "That's private property." Claire smirked, folded the page in half like she wanted it to scream. "Try enforcing that." I didn't. Flinch didn't ask her to hand it over. I just held the binder to my chest, the same way I used to hold their drawings from kindergarten. "Some papers you protect, others protect you. Don't worry," I said. "I already have." Claire stepped back, hands still gripping the page. "Tighter now." Jenna turned away first, not out of weakness, out of choice. They walked out in opposite directions. No goodbyes, no slammed doors, just distance. I stood there alone, lamp still on, safe still open, binder tucked under my arm like a quiet shield. For a moment, the whole house held its breath again, not from fear, from realization. Even paper can expose you if the ink knows where to look. I closed the safe, locked it, then reached into my purse. Same one as always, soft gray, lived in, honest. I took out the stamp, pressed it gently into the corner of the next page. Witness copy, because from now on, nothing would be silent, only stamped, filed, and seen. Some secrets aren't buried, they're placed in plain sight, sealed in polite font, and labeled addendum. If this story sounds like yours, don't scroll past. I'm here. The library smelled like old paper and unresolved things. Thompson stood by the window, binder in hand. His tie was straight for once. That worried me more than when it wasn't. Claire sat rigid, arms folded like she thought posture could protect her. David paced near the fireplace, Too fast to be casual. Jenna stared at the codicil like it might blink. Thompson cleared his throat, then opened the binder. The rustle of a page has weight. When the page could shatter your plans, there is one final provision, he said. Executed under full legal authority, confidential, until now. He laid the paper flat. I took a breath, then read it myself. In the event of material noncompliance, Claire leaned forward. David stopped pacing. Jenna looked at her lap. All designated assets shall transfer to Rosa Fernandez, of 108 Carmichael Avenue. Double quotes, silence, not quiet, silence, the kind that sharpens the air like broken glass. Claire's face strained so fast I almost offered her a chair. David blinked twice, then turned slowly to Jenna. She didn't return the glance. Rosa, Claire said, voice clipped. The woman who runs your sewing circle. Who stayed? I replied. David's voice rose. That's blackmail. I met his gaze without blinking. That's my legacy. Claire scoffed. You'd give everything to a woman who sells cross-stitch kits and thinks karma is a currency. No, I said, I'd give everything to someone who's never once lied to my face while holding my hand. Jenna flinched. Thompson nodded toward the clause. The conditions are legally enforceable. Mrs. Fernandez is aware, and has accepted the role of alternate beneficiary in writing. And then, as if summoned by the clause itself, Rosa walked in, brown loafers, cotton blouse, calm like tea that never spills. She didn't smile, she just placed one steady hand on my shoulder. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. There's a comfort that lives in people who choose you quietly. Claire pushed her chair back with a scrape. This is a joke. She has no claim. She does now, Thompson said. His tone wasn't cruel, just factual, final. Jenna rose slowly. Her eyes scanned the paper again, then stopped on the words, material noncompliance. You could see the moment she realized every word they'd spoken in the last week had just become a test. David muttered something under his breath. Claire didn't catch it, but I did. Undo it, he'd said. Soft, but sharp. I ignored him, reached into my purse, that same soft gray one, pulled out my reading glasses, and slid them on. Thompson handed me the final stamp. I pressed it to the page. Read INKWITNESS, certified. The smell of it hit first, then the truth. That's when I knew. I wasn't bluffing, not anymore. A vibration buzzed from the corner table. Claire's phone. She snatched it, glanced down, rolled her eyes, but not before I saw it. Olivia, you've crossed the line. She shoved the phone in her coat, then said, too casually, this won't hold up. It doesn't have to. I said, I will. They left, one by one, like shadows dissolving at dawn. Rosa stayed. She didn't say a word, just squeezed my hand once. That was enough. Later, I sat alone in the library, Toffin gone, binder closed, stamp resting on the edge of the desk, like a tiny red sentinel. No candles, no music. Just me and the room that once hosted bedtime stories. The books hadn't moved, but I had. I pulled the final page from the binder, ran my fingers over the ink. Then folded it once. Twice. Tucked it in the drawer of the desk. The one that sticks a little when you open it too fast. Because power doesn't just protect. It watches. It waits. I rose from the chair, turned off the lamp, and whispered to the dark, let them rethink their steps. They couldn't beat the clause, so they leaked the story. If this story sounds like yours, don't scroll past. I'm here. By morning, my name was on more lips than coffee. Front page. Local paper. Matriarch gone rogue. Inheritance warfare rocks. Maple Lane. The headline sat on my doorstep like a dead bird. No blood. Just feathers and intention. The reporter was young, probably just out of journalism school and hungry for controversy. Claire had fed him sound bites wrapped in sugar and sorrow. She's unwell, she said in print. She's being manipulated by outsiders. Outsiders. Funny. Coming from the girl who never once asked me why I stopped celebrating Christmas after Dad died. I didn't respond. Not yet. Jenna called 3 hours later. Trembling voice. Public panic. Double quotes. Mom. They twisted it. I swear I didn't know. I put her on speaker, then quietly hit record. Because sometimes silence doesn't protect you. It documents you, she cried. I didn't. I let her sob into the line like a girl, confessing to a priest she didn't believe in, when she hung up. I didn't replay the file. I just saved it, labeled it, Jenna _proof_1 WAV. Then I poured coffee. Black. No cream. No softening. They thought I'd hide. Instead, I cleaned the front room, dusted the mantel, straightened the photo frames. One cracked slightly at the edge from a move no one offered to help with. Then I filmed. No makeup, no script, no apology. Just me. In the house I built, in the chair I gave birth in, once, too early. I looked directly into the camera. Home, I said, is not where love lives. Love can lie. Home is where respect stays. Then I clicked stop, posted it, and made tea. 3 hours later, the comments started. Some kind, some cruel. Some with typos that made me worry about the nation's spelling crisis. But buried between the noise, something unexpected. Neighbors. Old friends. Even the pastor's wife. Liking. Sharing. Commenting. She always brought pies to the bake sale. She helped my daughter get her first apartment. They never visit. I've seen her gardening, alone, for years. Scandal outsells sentiment, but truth outlasts both. Around 4 p.m., the bell rang. I opened the door to Rosa. No words, just a bouquet of lilacs and eucalyptus, the kind that smells like memory and fresh beginnings. She didn't ask what happened. She just said, "You posted it." I nodded. She handed me the flowers. There was something in her eyes. Not sympathy. Conviction, the kind you earn in small rooms and long marriages. I placed the flowers in my grandmother's vase, the cracked one we'd glued twice. Let the stems lean just slightly left, like defiance in floral form. Rosa stood by the window. Watching as the wind stirred the porch swing. "Are you ready for what's next?" she asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up my phone, typed one sentence, just one, sent it to Olivia. No emojis, no punctuation, no fear, just, "Your move." Her reply came minutes later, short, precise, sharp enough to slice through wallpaper. Game on. I put the phone down, turned toward the front door and opened it. Wide. Not for anyone else. For the air, for the truth, for what comes when the storm doesn't pass. It settles. The house didn't tremble, but I did. Not from fear, from power learning how to stand still. And behind me, the flowers, fragrant, bold, UNBOTHERED. I never believed in quizzes, but I've seen what people reveal when they think they're being graded. If this found you at midnight, let me know. I'm listening. I invited them one by one. Together. Together, they play roles. Apart, they show faces. Claire came first. Hair perfect. Pen in hand. I gave her the gala brief, a benefit dinner for the children's library Rosa helped build. She smirked. "Should I wear pearls or diamonds?" I said, "Try humility." She laughed. "Didn't write that part down." David came 2 days later, fidgeted with his cuffling. Wouldn't sit. I handed him a name. Martin Shaw. His cousin. The one he ghosted after the business went belly up. "Reconcile." I said. "Apologize. Then listen." He scoffed. "This has nothing to do with money." "Exactly," I replied. Then came Jenna. No makeup. Sleeves rolled. I walked her to the kitchen, pointed to the meal plan. 3 meals a day. Local ingredients. For a week, she nodded without flinching. "Where's the apron?" she asked. I didn't say it aloud, but that was the right question. Over the next week, I watched. But I didn't hover. Even roses need space before they open. Claire ordered caterers within the hour, then supervised from the veranda, with rose in hand. She wore pride like perfume. Strong, floral, temporary. David texted Martin once, then told me he tried. I asked if they spoke. He shrugged. Didn't need to. He knows. No, he didn't. That's what betrayal is, unfinished. Sentences written on someone else's skin. Jenna burned. The first soup. Oversalted the roast. Cut her thumb on a mandolin. Then cried into the dish towel when no one was looking. But she kept going. Cleaned every pan. Rewrote every recipe. Learned how to dice an onion without flinching. Every night, I wrote. Not revenge, not proof, just observations, in a leather-bound journal I hadn't touched since her father's funeral, the one with his handwriting still tucked in the back flap. A grocery list. Butter, tomatoes, milk, even the dead remember the basics. The journal was thick by Friday. I labeled 3 envelopes, one for each of them, cream-colored, heavy stock, their names written in pen. That didn't smudge. Claire's was warm with compliments and colder with intent. David's was short, direct, truthful, Jenna, single quotes. It wasn't long either, but it had weight, like something pressed between the lines. That night, I sat in the study, lit the fire, folded each note, sealed them with wax, then placed them in front of the codicil, not above it, not beside it, before it, because inheritance isn't about wealth, it's about worth. The envelopes stared back like mirrors, and for a moment, I just sat, not angry, not hopeful, just still. The room didn't move, neither did I. A stillness so clean, it almost hummed. I reached for my pen, wrote one final sentence in the journal, let the weight decide, and just before I closed it, I slipped a single photo inside, the three of them, years ago. Covered in flour, fighting over frosting, Jenna's hand on Claire's arm, David Midluff, all of them real. For a moment, then I shut the journal, tied it with twine, set it on the mantel next to the flowers from Rosa. Now slightly wilted, still fragrant. I stood back, watched the envelopes like a scientist watching a beaker bubble, and whispered to the room, let's see whose heart holds weight. The cracks didn't show up in arguments. They showed up in captions. This story finds you. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Claire's post landed before sunrise. A photo of the gala, bathed in candlelight and curated charm. The caption, when bloodlines test you, build legacy instead. What a night. #family first, #leadership looks like this. The dress was red, the lighting warm, the smile borrowed. I stared at the screen in the dark, thumb hovering, then put the phone down without liking it. Not out of spite, out of certainty. She didn't post about the children's library, just the centerpieces. David called later that morning, tight voice, defensive. He wouldn't come, he said. Martin's still bitter. I didn't ask why. I already knew. Guilt ages faster than the people who cause it. He went on for 7 minutes about how he'd tried. I even offered lunch, my treat. I could hear him chewing while he said it. After he hung up, I crossed something out in my journal. Not a name, a sentence. The part that said, David may surprise me. He hadn't. It was almost dinner when Jenna knocked on the study door, hair tied back, smelling faintly of thyme and dish soap. She sat on the edge of the chair, hands in her lap, eyes red. I've been doing the math, she said. And I don't think I can afford to be written out. She didn't ask for reassurance, didn't try to impress, just confessed, like the kitchen had baked her into honesty. I didn't speak, just reached over and handed her a napkin from the tea tray. She used it, then folded it carefully, like it might be worth something someday. After she left, I turned to the desk, opened the codicil. The paper felt heavier than it used to, like even it had opinions now. I picked up my pen, the same one Claire gifted me 4 birthdays ago, engraved and untouched until now. I used it, not because of her, because ink doesn't lie. I rewrote the final allocation. Not all of it, just enough to favor effort over ego. The leather journal sat open beside me. I underlined 3 lines, then closed it gently, not like an ending, but like a prayer. I'd barely put the pen down when the front door banged open. Claire, perfume first, footsteps second, anger last. She didn't knock. Just stood in the doorway of the study, like the heir to a throne that never existed. Updated it, she said. Not a question, not a guess, accusation. I didn't answer. She stepped forward, voice sharp. Don't pretend this wasn't about proving a point. I looked at her. Closely, the way a jeweler looks at a diamond they already know is flawed. You're choosing favorites, she snapped. I rose, walked to the fireplace, picked up the journal, ran my fingers along the spine, then turned. The measure, I said, was always there. You just never bothered to look. She stared. Not at the journal. At my hands, like the weight of it unsettled her, like she could feel her own name slipping out of importance. She scoffed, opened her mouth probably to wound me, then didn't. Instead, she left. No slam. No tears. Just absence in heels. I stood there. Still holding the journal. The room went quiet again, not peaceful, just paused. In the hallway, the envelope with her name lay crooked on the table, unopened, still sealed. I adjusted it, not to protect it, to remind myself. Some names weigh more when they stay closed. I returned to the chair, opened the codicil one last time, signed beside the revision in my own hand, then tucked the pen inside the leather journal. Wrapped the twine again, and placed it back beside Rose's flowers. They were fading now, edges curled, colors soft, but still upright, still fragrant, still proof, just like me. And Claire's words, they still hung in the air. You're choosing favorites. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped pretending they were equal. Because broken trust doesn't make noise, it settles, in paper, in posture, in the way someone stops calling you mom and starts calling you her. And next to the flowers, the envelope waited, still, unopened, unclaimed, uncertain. I once birthed a child before the sun rose. Now I was being sued by one, before the coffee brewed. The knock came like thunder in a hallway of eggshells. 3 taps. No warmth, no warning, just a man in a black coat holding a beige envelope with my name and shame on it. Margaret Shaw. Yes, he handed it over, nodded like he pitied me, and walked back into the fog like a ghost clocking out. The paper was thick, official, cold, on top. Claire Marshall versus Margaret Shaw. Claim, undue influence, emotional manipulation, will tampering. I didn't blink, didn't clutch my chest. I just turned the kettle on. Because some mornings, rage is best served steeped, not screamed. I sat at the table, read the pages through cinnamon steam, then again, slower, every paragraph a paper cut with her signature at the bottom. Midway through, my phone buzzed. David, I didn't want it to get this far, he said, but I signed on. It's just about fairness. I stared at the open envelope beside my tea. Fairness has a funny mouth. It rarely speaks when you need it to. I hope you understand. I hung up before he finished. 2 hours later, Jenna arrived with muffins, still warm, blueberry, no nuts, just like when she was 8 and wanted to say sorry without saying it. I'm not part of this, she said, eyes firm. They called. I declined. I'm done fighting for love that should have been free. I almost cried. Almost, instead. I touched the corner of the envelope, then I rose, changed my blouse, put the journal in my purse, next to the pen and the codicil, and left. The courthouse didn't look like justice. It looked like bad lighting and linoleum floors. Thompson was already there, suited, calm, steady. Are you ready? He asked. I held up the envelope. Born ready, I said. But it took 68 years to admit it. Inside, the lobby hummed with whispers and heels. Then I saw her. Olivia. In her blazer too. Sharpened eyes, too unsure. She looked away when I met her stare, like a girl who'd touched fire and realized it burned slower than expected. We entered the courtroom. Echoes, hushed, shuffling. A judge who looked like she drank unsweetened coffee and didn't believe in small talk. I stepped forward, no tremble, no theatrics. Just my purse, opening, journal sliding out, papers laid clean, the codicil, the conditional bequest, my notes in my own hand, dated and witnessed. I said. My voice didn't shake, but the silence after did. The judge studied the documents, flipped through the journal slowly, stopping at a page I'd underlined twice. She paused, then looked up. That moment stretched, like old chewing gum, ugly, elastic, barely holding shape. Claire watched from across the aisle, still, but not composed. You can always tell who's lying. Their shoes fidget. David stared at his lap. And Jenna, she stood in the back, straight as the truth. The judge cleared her throat. Anything else, Mrs. Shaw? I smiled, lifted my chin, and whispered the only word that mattered. Proceed. The gavel hadn't dropped yet, but something inside me had not pain, not panic. Power. Like I'd finally taken my own side and meant it. The purse sat beside me, still open, still full of things that mattered. And the journal, it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. They didn't attack the will. They attacked me. Claire's lawyer had teeth, shiny, sharp, and perfectly rehearsed. Manipulation, by maternal pressure, he said. Emotional conditioning dressed as generosity. He pointed to the codicil like it was evidence of betrayal. He called me persuasive. He said it like a threat. Thompson didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He just stood, arms behind his back like a soldier who'd read every footnote. Clause 17, conditional bequest control, he said, and handed over the pages. The real ones, signed, sealed, dated before Claire ever posted her first caption. In pearls. The judge nodded, no reaction, but I could feel the air shift, like the tide had paused to listen. Claire crossed her legs. David adjusted his tie. Twice. Then Jenna stood, uninvited, unapologetic. I'd like to speak, she said. The courtroom murmured. The judge allowed it. She walked to the front, slow, shoulders square, eyes set like clock hands at midnight. My mother didn't manipulate me, she trusted me, which frankly was harder. She didn't cry, didn't smile, she just testified with every word. She peeled the room away from performance and pointed it at truth. She asked us to show up. One cooked, one ghosted, one bragged. You tell me who earned what. Silence. The kind that rings in your ear. Even Claire stopped breathing. I looked at my purse on the bench beside me. The journal inside still carried my husband's handwriting. Grocery lists and soft memories. I hadn't meant for this to become public theater. But truth never minds the spotlight. Lies do. Thompson returned to the podium. This isn't about inheritance. It's about instruction, he said. Then he pulled out a printout. David's texts, screenshots, dash, sent weeks before the will changed. Tell her what she wants to hear. Let Jenna play martyr. We'll fix it after probate. David looked like a boy who'd broken the vase and hoped the shards would lie. The judge raised an eyebrow. Claire looked betrayed by her own conspirator. Olivia folded her arms, stared at the floor. Whatever strategy she brought unraveled in one sentence. The power shifted quietly, like chairs being rearranged at a table I no longer sat at, because I'd already moved rooms. The judge called recess. Banged the gavel once. The sound echoed like a door clicking shut. I didn't rise. Not yet. I just sat there. Hands folded, on my lap, eyes closed. And in that silence, I saw it clearly. The courtroom, the chairs, the velvet carpet that tried to mute shame. I saw the girl. I was young, idealistic, planning birthday parties and college funds. And I saw the woman I'd become, not bitter, not broken, just resolved. We're almost there, I whispered to no one. To myself, to the journal, to the women who never get credit for staying silent until silence stops working. Behind me, Claire walked out first. David followed, slower. Jenna stayed. She reached for my hand. I didn't hold it, but I let it stay. And the purse, still closed. But this time, I could feel its contents humming, not with fear, with finish. Justice doesn't knock, it declares. And when it does, you don't cheer. You breathe. The judge read slowly, deliberately, like each syllable had to pass through a gate guarded by history. The court finds the codicil valid and the conditions enforceable. I didn't move, but inside, a tight string that had lived behind my ribs loosened. Claire blinked once, then slumped backward like air had betrayed her. David let out an audible sigh, part disbelief, part embarrassment. Jenna exhaled, too, but hers felt like release. It wasn't victory that stirred in me. It was a kind of stillness that only comes when your side of the truth finally echoes back at the right volume. I turned slightly, caught Thompson's eye. He gave the briefest of nods, as if to say, this wasn't luck, it was language. The purse sat at my feet, still zipped, still weighted with folded paper and past decisions, but this time, it didn't hum. It listened. I rose slowly, not because I was tired, because dignity deserves a pace. Claire didn't look up. I paused near her chair. She fixed her gaze on the far wall, like maybe the paint had answers. I was never against you, I whispered. She didn't flinch, but her jaw clenched, the kind of clench daughters inherit. Jenna reached for me. This time, I let her wrap both arms around my shoulders. No performance, no regret, just skin and bone and belief. David stood half a second later than expected. He didn't meet my eyes. Sorry, he muttered. Not to me. To the floor. I nodded once, not as forgiveness, as closure. We were raised to say sorry quickly, but not to mean it thoroughly. Then, as if summoned by something invisible, Rosa appeared at the courtroom door, still in her gardening shoes, still smelling of basil and backbone. You were right, she said, holding out a small silver locket. I thought you might want this back now. The locket, my mother's, my first. I hadn't seen it in years. She'd tucked it in her apron after my father's funeral, said I wasn't ready to carry both grief and metal. I took it, closed my fingers around it like it was warmth itself. Thank you, I said, not just for the locket, but for staying. The courtroom emptied like a tide, slow, reluctant. Claire was the last to leave. Her heels clicked down the aisle, staccato and stubborn. She didn't look back. Jenna lingered. David disappeared. Thompson gathered his papers. Olivia was already gone. I sat back down one more time, alone now. Let the hush wrap around me like an old sweater. The bench beneath me still carried the heat of confrontation, but my hands were cool. I touched the locket to my chest, felt the thud of something ancestral behind my eyelids. A child version of me, spinning in a summer dress, a young mother measuring cups of flour, a woman, finally still, not bitter, not broken, just learned. I opened my eyes, stared at the empty chair Claire had occupied. So straight, so rehearsed, so wrong. I hope you grow from this, I said under my breath. To her, to me, to whoever listens when women finally speak without asking for permission. I stood again, slipped the locket into my purse, folded the flap down, let the click echo louder than the gavel had, and as I turned toward the door, I whispered, "May you learn, power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives in velvet boxes." 1 month later, I opened the library doors again, same brass handles, same lemon-polished shelves, but the air, it had changed, not heavy, not hostile, just cleared, like a house after the storms passed. And all that's left is what stayed bolted down. Rosa stood near the fireplace, wiping her hands on a linen cloth that had outlived 3 renovations. Jenna leaned against the window frame, sunlight slashing her profile into something statuesque. Claire was late. David looked bored. I placed the velvet chest on the old oak table. Its hinges still squeaked, one note too sharp, like it remembered every hand that had forced it open before. It was ready. Inside, not riches. Reminders. The sapphire choker gleamed like apology trapped in glass. Claire arrived just as I lifted it, hair curled, eyes cool. "This," I said, holding it up to the light, "was your grandmother's. She wore it to testify against a banker twice her age." Claire's lip twitched. Pride, shame, recognition. "Maybe all 3. You may keep it," I continued, "after you've pledged half its appraisal to the literacy grant we discussed." Her mouth opened, then closed, then she nodded. Once David shifted in his chair like conscience itched. I turned to him, the cufflinks gold, square inscribed on the underside. "Strength without witness is just ego." "They're yours," I said, "if the check to your cousin's college fund clears by Friday." He flinched, a beat too long. Then, of course, Jenna didn't ask, didn't glance. She knew. I held the locket out with 2 hands, the same one. Rosa returned to me after the trial, still warm from my palms, still mine, for showing up before the cameras, I said. And after them. She took it gently, like it might break, like it already meant more than inheritance ever could. A cameraman whispered something behind the tripod. Click. The lens caught the moment, but not the meaning. Only we would ever know the weight that exchanged hands. Each child signed their pledge. Not just ink, intent. The pens clicked in sequence like dominoes, obeying gravity. The local reporter asked for a quote. I declined, then said something anyway. "My greatest gem," I said, "is peace." The cameras caught it, but the quiet afterthought was mine. They left one by one. Claire didn't hug me, but she touched the sapphire before walking out, fingers grazing memory. David shook Thompson's hand. No theatrics, just completion. Jenna helped Rosa stack teacups in the next room. I sat alone again. Same oak table, same velvet box, now empty. The sunlight shifted, cutting across the rug like golden ribbon unraveling from an invisible gift. My fingers found my wedding band. Thin, worn smooth by years of dishwater, diapers, and decisions. Not glamorous, but eternal. I turned it once on my finger, the way I used to when he was alive during speeches, sermons, and arguments I didn't want to win. It spun easier now, like even metal understood. I'd loosened the grip. Rosa returned. She didn't speak, just set a lavender sprig beside the velvet box. Symbolic, maybe, or maybe just kindness. "Do you regret anything?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. Silence filled the room like steam. Not uncomfortable, just ... earned. Then I said, "No, because regret is a mirror you choose to hang. And I'd taken mine down years ago." Instead, I looked at the empty velvet box, not as something missing, but as something given. Not everyone will understand what it costs to rewrite legacy in real time, but those who do never forget. I stood, rolled my shoulders back. The locket shone at Jenna's neck as she laughed in the next room. Claire's car engine turned over outside. David's footsteps faded down the walk, and me. I touched my wedding band one more time, let it rest against the pulse that told me, I'm still here, alive, triumphant, and if they ever forget what I stood for, the velvet box will still sit here, empty, but echoing. I wasn't wearing black. I was wearing flower, and it felt more sacred than any courtroom robe ever had. The kitchen had been remodeled since the storm tiles realigned, cupboards repainted, appliances that no longer sighed when touched, but it still smelled like the past. Yeast, rosemary, old secrets folded into warm dough. The apron hugged my waist again. Not as armor, but as memory. Jenna's team bustled outside the swinging door, unloading trays. They didn't knock, they just laughed. That's how you know you're welcome. When people stop asking for permission, I pulled the last loaf from the oven. The heat flushed my cheeks. A live heat. Honest heat. Behind me, a shadow moved. Not Jenna, not Claire, Michael. He looked older, but not tired. Just late. I should have come sooner, he said. Not an excuse. Not a plea. Just a breadcrumb of regret. I didn't speak. Not yet. Silence is a better test of sincerity than any sentence. He took a breath, then reached for a cloth and started slicing the bread like he used to, quietly, without fanfare. That's how you know you're forgiven, when someone lets you help again without announcing it. Claire appeared next, then David. They stood shoulder to shoulder like kids in a lineup, humbled, unpolished, almost human. I passed them each a warm slice. No lesson, no condition, no edge in my voice, just bread. They ate without looking up, which is how you know someone's chewing on more than food. From the doorway, Olivia watched. No words, no clipboard, no defense, just her. Small, shadowed, and for once, silent. Rosa entered behind her, 2 mugs in hand and a smirk only women over 60 know how to wear. We all sat at the same table that once held letters, lies, and lavender sprigs. Now, it held tea. And possibility, to growth, Rosa said, raising her mug, to peace. Jenna added. Michael clinked his cup softly against mine. A small toast, a smaller smile, and me. I stood up slowly, wiped my hands on the apron, and turned back to the oven. It was still warm, like the house knew I was home. I slid the last tray inside and closed the door with a quiet, final thud. This, I said, is where I belong. The kitchen didn't applaud. It just stayed lit, bathed in late sunlight that danced through the windows like forgiveness finally found its angle. Outside, a bird tapped the glass once, then flew. Inside, no one left. Not yet. And the flower on my apron, still soft. Still sacred, still mine.